Hello and welcome to the Dog Studio. I'm your host Radek Blažo, and this week I have a special episode planned for you. With the recent passing of Pope Francis, I found myself reflecting on his legacy, not just his outspoken responses to war, injustice, and inequality, but the quieter moments too. In particular, one small gesture that touched the hearts of animal lovers around the world. His acknowledgement to the deep emotional bond between humans and their pets. It happened, according to many reports, in St. Peter's Square in 2014. Then the 77-year-old Pope Francis approached a grieving boy whose dog has just died. In that moment, the Pope offered words that surprised many and comforted even more.
Magari tutti noi potessimo piangere.
One day, we will see our animals again in the eternity of Christ. Paradise is open to all God's creatures. As a dog owner, reading those words brought tears to my eyes. Anyone who has loved and lost a pet knows the hollow ache it leaves behind. The sorrow is real, and the science confirms, akin to the loss of the family member. Yet these words of Pope Francis caused a stir in the Catholic Church, of course, as many of the more traditional side of the Church did not approve of the message. Animals are somehow below humans, and we should not put them on the same position. In that little moment, however, Pope Francis may have just opened his heart to a grieving boy. But in doing so, he also showed the compassion for all those who have ever loved an animal. Yet with those short words, I kept the thought in my mind. As Pope passed just a few days ago, I began to think and wonder, had Pope Francis ever known the love of an animal? Have any of the Church's leaders truly lived and loved a creature who offered nothing but devotion in return? As a dog researcher, I could immediately think of a few stories connecting dogs to the Holy Man. However, I am also well aware of the fact that the relationship between the Church and animals, and dogs in particular, had long been complicated. The scripture mentions the dogs 40 times, 30 in the Old Testament and 10 in the New, and nearly always in a negative light. However, not all men of faith have always regarded dogs as such. Exceptions do exist, and they are quite remarkable. Today I want to tell you 3 of those stories, 3 different tales of dogs crossing their paths with the men of the Church. The first part of our episode today is a story of the breed created by men of Church. Travel with me to the depth of a forest, not just any forest, the Ardennes, in what is now known as Belgium. It's the 8th century. The trees are thick, the fog is low, and hidden deep inside this green maze is a Benedictine monastery built in honor of Saint Hubert, the patron saint of hunters. Here is the twist. The monks who lived in that monastery were not just reading scripture and tending to the gardens. They were also breeding dogs. Not guard dogs, but something gentler, something smarter, and maybe even holier. They were creating a hound with a purpose, to find the lost. You see, the Ardennes was a wild country. Travelers were missing all the time, pilgrims on their ways to sacred shrines, hunters who strayed too far, even messengers caught by the storm. So the monks began carefully breeding dogs with one divine trait, a nose that could find anything. These dogs, known as Chien de Saint Hubert, Saint Hubert's hounds, were slow, serious, and unshakably focused. They had long ears that swept the forest floor, deep folds of the skin that held the scent, and eyes that looked like they had seen the soul of the trail. They were, in a word, extraordinary. And they were not just useful, they were truly sacred. The monks believed that their dogs were doing the holy work. And after all, what's more Christ-like than going out to find the ones who have gone astray? So when people came knocking, nobles from France and kings from England, the monks shared their hounds. But only with those who understood. These were not just hunting dogs. These were rescuers, guides. Some even could say they could track the scent of a soul. One of those kings, William the Conqueror, he brought the breed to England, where it slowly developed into something we still know today, the breed of dogs known as bloodhounds. That same wrinkled, noble dog with the nose of a miracle. Up next, we head into the snowy passes of Swiss Alps, where another group of monks created the giant dog that is well known all around the world. Consider the breed of dogs named after a saint, Saint Bernard. They were named after the Saint Bernard of Menton. The breed was developed at a hospice founded in the Western Alps in the 11th century. The place is perched over 8,000 feet above the sea level, at the terraceous Great St. Bernard Pass. The hospice served as both the sanctuary and the salvation for travelers crossing between Italy and Switzerland. Winters at this place were rough, often stretched into June, and many lives were claimed by the snow and storm. The monks living at this place offered their services to those who dared the journey. By the 17th century, they also began to keep large dogs. At first, these dogs were gifts from local village Valais. The dogs were large and at first they came to be supposed guard dogs to guard the place from outsiders. However, very soon, the monks realized that there is something quite remarkable about them. As the work at the hospice never stopped, the monks were often called to help the trace and search for the travelers who get lost in the mountains. Many of them were caught by avalanches, and often they were only found as the winter was over and snow melted. That was the reality of this place, and it was rough. However, as soon as the dogs started to accompany these monks into the depth of the mountains, miracles started to happen. The monks realized these were not just guard dogs, these were dogs with a purpose. They very quickly learned what is needed and started to help, searching for the lost people in the snow. The tales of these fantastic dogs traveled far. It is recorded that even the soldiers of the Napoleon Bonaparte's army told tales of them. The magical dogs rescuing people in the Alps. The monks bred them to keep these specific traits which were needed in the place. They had to be strong enough to plow through the snow. Their feet had to be large to dig into the snow easily and fast. Their large nose served the purpose. It was even more sensible and could smell the lost people even under the heavy snow. And last but not least, they had to be friendly, as no aggression was allowed when it came to the rescue mission. The breed that emerged, the Saint Bernard, was quite literally heaven sent. In a little while we discover what Trump has to do with a breed of dogs. Stay tuned. The last story connecting the man of faith to dogs. And this one is one that instantly came to my mind, and it's totally different than the ones we heard before, yet not less remarkable. It is a story of breed of dogs that mostly everyone knows and mostly everyone loves. Jack Russell Terrier. These scrappy little terriers are well known all over the world. They were created and carry the name of Reverend John Russell of Devonshire, England. He was both a man of cloth and a passionate fox hunter. One could say he had his own Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde situation going on, but his was Reverend John Russell by profession and fox hunter Jack Russell by heart. In the early 1800s, while still at studies at Oxford, he was already a keen fox hunter. One day, just walking on the street, he saw a dog that changed his life. Quite literally, he saw a dog on the street. The dog was small, white, quick, fearless, and yet very loving. He immediately asked to buy the creature. The owner of this little mutt was a milkman. The dog was nothing special to him, so he was happy to make some more money and sold the little dog off. I mentioned Trump as an introduction to this chapter, so here it is. In fact, Reverend John Russell named this little female he brought from a milkman Trump. No correlation to the president at all, just the name, a coincidence. She was the grand dame of Jack Russells as we know them today. The thought behind creating this breed was simple. Russell wanted a terrier exactly for his purpose of fox hunting. The dog so small that he would be able to follow the fox underground. To allow for this, the dog had to be quick and fast and had to be able to maneuver really easily in the tangles of the tunnel. It had to be fierce and strong in the temperament, but not too much, as he would kill the fox underground. There is no joy in that for any fox hunter. They want the dog to scare the fox enough so that she runs out of the dark ground and runs into the forest where the hunter can follow and do his piece. And to distinguish the dog from the fox itself, these dogs had to be predominantly white in color. In fact, this is still stated in the breed standard today. And this is all that Trump was, and this is all that the breed is today, 200 years later. Russell once said that the true Jack Russells should be as hard as nails, but as faithful as your shadow. His passionate love for the breed has created a unique companion that serves so many around the world. And even if not fox hunting, the Jack Russells of today remind us of the devotion one can have in making his vision a reality. Stories like this hint at the more intimate relationship between the clerics and the canines. In the Vatican frescoes and art, dogs often appear at the feet of saints or popes, reinforcing the spiritual or protective roles. The last pope I was able to find who actually did care for a dog inside the Vatican was Pope Pius IX, who was a pope from 1846 to 1874. His companion was a small white Maltese. Animals bring joy, warmth, and unconditional love. The Pope, a man of bridges, always sought to reconcile the spiritual with the human and the holy with the mundane. Love is the answer, he would say when asked about how opposing views might come together. Anyone who has gazed into the eyes of the beloved pet knows of this love. Thank you for listening to this episode of The Dog Studio. I'm your host Radek Blažo. If you like this episode, please follow us, give us a like, write a review, and share this episode with many people who might like to listen. Until next time, enjoy your dogs.